you miss me? I've been out of it comatose, but the depression is...
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobby list podcast for me, SlowBurne from Wildfire Gaming. I'm flying solo this week for the first time in quite some time, as my wife Reagan and I have really been going hard discussing the television world, Game of Thrones specifically, and The Last of Us, of course, as well. But she's sick this week. She's also getting ready to take her finals and finally graduate from college with degree in hand. So that has left me to kind of call an audible this week and return to the realm of video games for this week's episode. I've been sitting on the topic of this week's episode, the greatest video game twists, for some time anyway. So I'm happy to take this opportunity to provide you with a fun new list, the one that is admittedly fraught with spoilers, so proceed with caution. More on that in a moment. First, I just want to remind you that you can write into the show at ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. Nobody's done it yet. We're coming up on our 25th episode. So if you're the first, imagine the fanfare and fame that will come along with it. So get to it, people. But yes, today I'm going to be walking through my 25 favorite video game twists. I am going to have timestamps in the description of all versions of this episode so you can skip around and not have games spoiled for you that you don't want to. But I am also going to be talking around some of the spoilers of some of the lesser known or maybe arguably more important twists that you wouldn't want to have spoiled for you. So I'm going to have a designation for each entry in the description whether the game is spoiled or safe for those of you who are listening who may not have finished every game on the list, which, let's be honest, is probably 100% of you because this is a pretty eclectic bunch. Either way, I'm excited to get into this topic. As storytelling and the art of a great twist is one of my favorite subjects to dissect. So let's get into it. Number 25 on this list, I have a kind of a surprising entry from perhaps an unexpected series, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 25 is Sonic Adventure. The spoiler or the twist around the character of E102 Gamma. Obviously, the Sonic series is not really known for its great storytelling, although I would argue that there actually is some good stuff in both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, which I think are certainly the peaks of the series as far as I'm concerned. I haven't really played the Genesis originals. I know that's probably blasphemous to some of you true fans out there. But yeah, I started with Sonic Heroes on that was actually a pretty big game for the series. I think maybe it's not the greatest in the world, but it was on all of the different consoles, and so therefore I think it kind of hit a wider audience than Sonic ever had before. Because before it was obviously on the Sega consoles, and then was on the GameCube, which was obviously far from the most successful console of that generation. But yeah, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, I ended up playing after Sonic Heroes, so kind of went backwards there. And while Sonic Heroes doesn't really have any storytelling to speak of, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, I'm surprised really did. And I think and there was some good stuff in both of them, but the sub storyline of E102 Gamma, I think, is without question the magnum opus of the Sonic team. So basically, what's going on here, hidden in between the typical Sonic fare of stopping Eggman, saving the world, was this almost standalone story. So the way Sonic Adventure works is you play as six different characters. So you start as just Sonic, but you have the ability to unlock kind of some of the usual suspects like Tails and Knuckles, and then you also get Amy, and then you have kind of these two weird characters, Big the Cat and E102 Gamma. And all of them sort of change up the gameplay, but they also add different layers to the story. Some obviously more important than others. And the story of E102 Gamma it feels very standalone in the sense that you don't really cross paths with him a lot, maybe even never as Sonic, but with Amy, I know that you definitely do, which is cool. And seeing how all the stories link together is definitely a strength of Sonic Adventure. But the standalone story of E102 Gamma is just really, really strong on its own. Basically, what you have going on here is you're one of Eggman's robots that has kind of somehow acquired reason and self-control. So when you're tasked with hunting down I guess the defective brothers of the unit, because I think he only made like four of you. You kind of come to realize that the computer system, the operating system of each of these robots is actually a living creature, a bird. and at least some of them are relatives. It's been obviously it's a little foggy now. This has been a long time since I played Sonic Adventure, but um, the story ends up being like a really somber, dark story. Gamma is sort of tasked with killing his closest brother, which is I don't remember what he calls him, but he's like this black robot. And he finally kills him, and then that frees the creature inside. And so in the end, Gamma does the only thing that he can and actually ends his own life so that the living creature inside him can escape and be together with its family. So it's an unbelievably mature storyline in a game that's clearly marketed toward children, and I think that's part of what made it so have such a lasting impact on those of us that experienced it when we were children. At a time when, particularly in games geared toward children, narratives and twists were, not the norm. So really cool stuff. If you never played it, it might seem a little bit trite and simple compared to some of the stories that I'm going to discuss later on in this list. But at the time, man, it was really something to see. Number 24 on this list is from Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, which I'm calling A Brother's Tall Tale. So, Uncharted 4 is another game that it's been a while since I played it. I only played it once, but the idea here is that one of its opening sequences is told from the perspective of Nathan's brother Sam Drake, who you didn't even know existed until this game, which that in itself is kind of a big reveal. But basically, he's telling the story of his escape from this island prison that's basically created but through this prison revolt that's led by this organized crime lord. And while he's telling this story, you're actually playing through um, the story from his perspective. So you actually fight your way out of the prison. You're interacting with this crime boss, and just kind of like Nathan Drake, you're kind of in the same position where you're just kind of dumbfounded by what he's telling you and what you're playing through. So the sequence ends up being the driving force of the main story here, where it brings Nate out of retirement because Sam only has like a limited. From what I remember, he only has like a limited amount of time to track down this artifact to pay off the crime boss. But it's only toward the end of the game that Sam reveals, or he's kind of forced to reveal that it was all a lie. And like Nathan Drake, we feel betrayed in this moment because we kind of intuitively bought the story when we play through it. It's rare to, almost never do you play through a sequence in a game where what you're playing is not what actually happened. I can think of another really good example in Final Fantasy VII that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But this is a really good example of that, and it's another one of those examples where Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann, of course, was the writer on this game, really have this penchant for subverting expectations in ways that can only really be conveyed or at least maximized through an interactive medium. So, I'm not a huge fan of the Uncharted series, but Uncharted 4 I thought was a huge step up, and part of it was this kind of storytelling twist here that they laid down on us. Number 23, I have Red Dead Redemption 1, which is the fate of John Marston and his successor. This twist, I think, worked pretty damn well for everyone that played the original Red Dead back in the day. But I can only imagine how much harder it would actually hit for someone that played Red Dead Redemption 2, which is, of course, a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 1, and an all around masterpiece, first. Because that game significantly expands on the character of Jack Marston, who ends up being very important at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1. I'm hoping to find this out for myself one day, as I have played through Red Dead Redemption 2 with Reagan, but we have not played through Red Dead Redemption 1, so we'll definitely do that at some point, and we'll see how this twist works for her in the end. But basically at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1, John Marston is killed by these kind of government forces, the Pinkertons essentially, or whatever you want to call them, which is a true gut punch, considering everything that he went through and that he did for this organization and everything he had to give up for them. I wouldn't really qualify that as a twist, but then the fact that the game flashes forward to a grown-up Jack Marston, his son, on the hunt for the man that, basically condemned his father to death, and then actually following through on that plan was really revolutionary. Yeah, I think it had a major influence on other masterpieces to follow, including obviously Red Dead 2 itself, but also The Last of Us Part 2, with the way that it kind of has its epilogue. just really surprising. Definitely something that I did not see coming. I didn't play Red Dead 1 when it first came out, but I didn't have it spoiled for me either. And so, and I hope that you won't either, having listened to this episode. Only hopefully you're only listening to this if you have played the game. But yeah, that was a really big surprise, and like they really hammer that home as well, where you can continue to explore the world as Jack Marston, kind of in the post game, which of course Red Dead 2 kind of followed in its footsteps with that, with playing as John Marston in the end. But man, that was a really big surprise for me, and one that I thought was really cool. It's makes the ending, super strong, and really kind of turns the character of Jack on his head. Like that's not the end, especially if you play Red Dead 2. It's not the end that you would ever expect for that character. And so for that character to develop in that way, it's just really, really intriguing. And I think that Red Dead 2 only makes this twist even stronger. So awesome stuff from the scribes over at Rockstar. Number 22, I have Final Fantasy VIII, which is kind of just the the relationships between Laguna and Alone, and of course Squall and Renoa and Renoa's mother, just all those linked together, and just kind of how the game reveals those plot points. It's definitely one of the more complicated. Some might even argue overcomplicated twists on this list. It's a multi-layered reveal of with Laguna, who we only get for most of the game through flashbacks, and we kind of establishes his relationship to Renoa's mother, and then obviously this character of Elone, who we learn is sort of the sorceress that is able to send us our perspective back in time and see these scenes. And of course, Squall, the main character. All of this is convoluted, I will admit, but it really actually worked for me quite well. And I think this is the best stuff in Final Fantasy VIII. The entire game is set up for reveals throughout. It's got this judicious use of flashbacks, which I enjoy, with the game's best character, Laguna, and his journey from kind of this rebel leader to this hopeless romantic to this protector of the young character of Alone, who's just a little girl at the time, and her adoptive mother Rain, to ultimately husband, and unbeknownst to even to him for the majority of the game, but father to the main character of Squall. And I don't think they even actually come out and really spell that out in the game, which is really cool. Final Fantasy really had to pinch it for doing that. I think about the history of Shadow and Realm in Final Fantasy VI. That's another really great twist, but that one is like even so far in the background that there's probably a lot of people today that still don't even really understand the true nature of that relationship. But I like how Final Fantasy VIII really toes the line of spelling things out for you, and sort of slowly revealing this yarn over the course of the game. But then there's even still stuff hidden in the background that it doesn't come out and fully lay out on the table, and kind of leaves for the player to surmise on their own, which I think is really well done. It's convoluted, and but the way that the game ultimately reveals these relationships, I think, is quite strong, and like I said, results in its best moments. And then just the idea that Laguna himself is the subject of the lyrics for the game's main theme and in-universe pop song "Eyes on Me" is just awesome stuff. I love whenever music is used in a way that the characters in the story recognize the music as well. Like the Rains of Castamere in Game of Thrones is another great example. And then you kind of are in lockstep with the characters whenever you hear that song. I think that's really great stuff. So Final Fantasy VIII, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy by any means. It's definitely uneven at times, but really great stuff in terms of the reveals that it lays out there. And honestly, all the Final Fantasy games really like to have at least some sort of twist. But other than Final Fantasy VII, I think I would put Final Fantasy VIII twists at the top of just the way that they roll those out, and then the fact that those twists are really the driving force of the what makes that game so good. There's some other twists, like with the backstory of the characters and how they're all kind of linked, that are a little more questionable, I think, that are not on this list. But these the unveiling of these specific relationships, I think, is really well done. So number 21 here, we have Shadow of the Colossus, and basically just kind of the reveal of the main goal plan of this shadowy character of Dorman. I think part of the brilliance of Shadow of the Colossus twist is that it kind of happens, or the realization of what's going on kind of happens at different stages for everyone. It's likely that the player's never going to fully trust Dorman. He does kind of reveal his hand somewhat at the game's start. He admits that. The protagonist Wander may give up more than he bargains for in exchange for the resurrection of the character of Mono. But the full depth of his betrayal and then just the toll that the task of killing these various colossi is taking on Wander's body and soul is only truly revealed at the end after he has completed his task. And then the hits just kind of keep coming as this kind of now hybrid of Wander slash Dorman put together are kind of vanquished by this band of warriors that show up at the end that are determined to continue to confine Dorman to this mysterious temple where he is for the majority of the game. And then they leave, and the giant bridge from the that you that's so iconic from the game finally collapses, and you truly are stranded there. And as far as you know, Wander is killed. It really ends in a very bleak place where it seems like everybody's dead. Wander's dead. Dorman's dead. The horse aggro is dead. Mono's dead. But then it actually takes a really nice turn in the end where Mono wakes up, aggro shows up, and he's injured, but he's still alive. And then there's this horned baby that's left behind in the wake of this kind of magical explosion. And so, what exactly is implied by this ending, and what they're going for here, and its potential ties to Eco, of course, still remain up for debate to this day because it's all done non-verbally, or the vast majority of it is done non-verbally. So, a lot of really cool stuff there. But I think the main thing I'm trying to get here on this list, really try to convey here, is just the twist of what is happening to Wander as he is killing these colossi for Dorman, and basically the price that he is paying as he does that. And like I said, it kind of part of the beauty of it is that it is you realize what is going on at various stages over the course of the game. So really well done stuff. Great nonverbal storytelling. One of the best examples of that. Number 20, I have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, which is the twist surrounding the character of Impa. So I played through all of the Zelda series in relative chronological order as best as I could, given the timeline triple split that takes part in that lineage. I was playing through this game starting in 2022, and of course I started with Skyward Sword because it is the first game in the chronology. And I knew that going in, and so I wasn't surprised by any of the reveals that were going on there. And I had played through at least the first part of the game back in the day, so I wasn't surprised by a lot of the stuff like at the end, this villainous character of Demise, who we never really see again, but kind of is reincarnated through Ganon and Ganondorf in future series or entries in the series. That wasn't really like a big surprise to me, and of course like the fact that Zelda's lineage continues is no big surprise. And the whole thing about the spirit of the hero being reborn in different links is no big surprise. But what didn't surprise what I did not see coming is the twist that this old kind of wizened figure in the Temple of Time that has been helping Link throughout his journey is actually Zelda's protector Impa, who has persisted for all this time to ensure that Demise is defeated and that Zelda is protected. It's really cool because you actually see a younger version of Impa protecting Zelda in real time. So you don't really, since you haven't gone back in time yet, you don't really. It's not even really like on the table for those to be the same characters, at least for me whenever I was playing it. And so finding out the truth about all that, and once you realize that time travel is involved in the story at the end, and that she's been kind of here waiting for Link all this time, is just a really cool twist that I genuinely did not see coming until the very end when it was revealed, and it's still one of my favorite moments in the entire series. Okay, number 19 is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. The twist of, I guess we'll just say that it's Krea's plan, her goal in the game. It's another one that you could kind of argue on the surface level is not exactly unpredictable. The fact that Kreia is kind of like this dark figure, we kind of know that early on that she has a dark past, and she is not particularly forthcoming about that. But the reveal at the end of her ultimate goal of just completely eliminating the Force entirely, it's just so it's a goal that's so grand and ominous it still manages to catch you by surprise, even if you never trusted her from the beginning. To the point where it's like it's just not something that you can really see coming. Um, so that I just remember seeing it. Like I haven't played that game for probably over a decade, and I still remember that big reveal where that she kind of finally lays all her cards out on the table. I mean, there's some other cool twists in there too, like that the leader of that sort of Jedi temple on the whatever that planet, Telos, is a dark Jedi as well. Like there's definitely some good twists there. Um, some of the storytelling is hurt by the fact that Obsidian never really finished the game, and that is a shame. And I think it could be. I think that hurts the game overall, the impact of the storytelling and the ending and some of the stuff in between as well. And to be honest, I really don't think that Obsidian's writers are as good as the writers of some of the games that I have higher on this list. But I will never forget that big reveal of Kreia's ultimate goal. It still sticks with me today, and I'll never forget it. I definitely am looking forward to playing that game someday with Reagan. We've played through the first Knights of the Old Republic, but haven't played the second, and so I'm looking forward to seeing her reaction to that big twist. Number 18. This is one that really, I don't know that a lot of people would put it as high as I am here at number 18, but it's one that really worked for me in the moment. And part of that is it's probably when I experienced the game. But number 18 is from Fallout 3, the reveal of the true identity of President Eden. Now, if you play through the game and you really mainline it, or you don't engage with the Enclave radio that really sort of establishes this character and really builds him up, then I can see how this wouldn't really work for you. But whenever I played the game for the first time, I really took my time because I never played an open world game like this before. And I did experiment with all the various radio stations, and especially at the beginning, whenever you haven't fixed the tower for Galaxy News Radio yet, there are times when uh, the Enclave station is all you have. And playing this game when I did, I was still not really used to playing horror games, and Fallout 3 isn't really a horror game, but there's definitely some really scary, dark elements in it. And so I did that would kind of break the tension whenever you have the radio going. And so I would have the Enclave station going a lot. In those moments. And so I had plenty of time sort of checking it out and hearing all of President Eden's propaganda. And it's all kind of geared to give you expectations of what this player is going to be like kind of like a stereotypical president, maybe a mix of Ronald Reagan and Lyndon Johnson. He tells these stories of how he loves baseball and he has this childhood where he spent playing with his dog. And then when you finally meet him and you realize that all of that is a lie, and the president is just this cold, calculating computer that completely created this persona to just predispose Americans to like and accept him, it hits a bit close to home, honestly, especially even in modern times. And I think that that's particularly true whenever he sort of hits you with the 1-2 punch there, where he almost immediately and it's just callously asks the player to essentially wipe mankind away entirely to make way for a new beginning, which is of course something that no human being would ever actually a plan that no human would ever or almost no human would actually come up with. And it's just like such an obvious it's such a solution designed by a computer. And I think that Fallout 3 gets a lot of criticism for like, oh my God, that ending is just so ludicrously evil. No one would ever actually do that. But I think that's kind of the point. The point is that this robot is so out of touch with what human beings would actually view as an acceptable solution to the radiation, that it's like ludicrous, but at the same time like kind of believable, honestly. And just the way that I experienced that twist with having that character built up over the course of dozens of hours as I played the game, it's just God, I just love Fallout 3 so much, and I know a lot of that is because I played it at the time, and I had never played anything like it, but I still think the atmosphere of it is just so well done. And some of the writing is really well done as well. I don't think that they get enough credit for the strength of um, some of the scenarios that they set up here in Fallout 3. So really loved that game, really enjoyed that twist. It definitely has stuck with me over the course of all these years. Number 17 now, I have The Secret Family Twist from Pokemon Sun and Moon. Obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast from the beginning, it's no surprise that I am a massive fan of Pokemon Sun and Moon. But considering the really general lack of storytelling in the series prior to Sun and Moon, Black and White notwithstanding, and then, of course, the abysmal state of the series ever since, it is genuinely shocking that a Game Freak they managed to just hit this one hit wonder grand slam for all time with this genuinely well written character of Lily, and then this story of this shattered family with her obsessive mother Lusamine, who ends up being the fact that she's the antagonist is a little bit of a twist as well, but she's just kind of shattered her family and as part of her obsession to achieve permanent beauty. And then the reveal of Lily's relationship to Lusamine is really well done, and it's one thing, but then it kind of hits you twice with the reveal that this mysterious character of Gladion, who you have been encountering over the course of the story, is also in this family. Is it just really? I think that second reveal, where they're just hitting you from all sides here, just really sends this twist up even higher for me. And I think the fact that it's taking place in a Pokemon game as well, like obviously my expectations or your expectations going in as a player for the storytelling are going to be very low. And so the fact that they were able to hit you with all this stuff and like that they were able to actually craft a well-written story was awesome. And I, I I remember finishing this game and just thinking, man, this is unbelievable. This story was so good. This series is really turning things around after X and Y, which was just kind of a disaster. And I was just so, I knew that the Switch was coming out next. And so I was just really optimistic about the future of the series and the fact that it's just been such a disaster since then. It's such a shame. But I'll never forget that first playthrough and, of course, subsequent playthroughs that I've gone back and played it many times just considering how much I love it with different people. Um, but playing through Sun and Moon and experiencing that for the first time was really just incredible, and some of my favorite gaming memories ever. So number 16 now, I have The Fate of Heirs. I think that's how you pronounce it. Heirs, Apothecaries from Octopath Traveler 2. I was just going to say here, this is the first one that because Octopath Traveler 2 is kind of a more recent game. And I wouldn't want you to be spoiled here. This is the first one that I'm going to say is I'm going to try to keep it safe for people who may not have played the game but are interested. So you should be safe here listening to this. I'm not going to spoil anything major that's going on here. But first, just kind of set up how Octopath Traveler works. Obviously, I played the original Octopath Traveler before too. I really loved it for its setting, its RPG mechanics, and then of course just this perfectly tuned turn-based battle system that just really fell in love with almost immediately. And so as a result, that first game already was one of my favorite games of all time. But I had to admit that the character-specific stories, the individual chapters, while they were enjoyable, ultimately I kind of thought that they were on the weaker side. At least until you kind of learn at the end that there's this surprising thread that binds many of them together. And perhaps we'll talk about that here in a minute. But as such, I was just genuinely and consistently amazed by the quality of the storytelling in Octopath Traveler 2, to the point where its kind of similar game ending twist that sort of links their stories together actually didn't hit as hard for me as it was good, but didn't hit as hard for me as some of the storytelling in the individual character arcs because I thought they were just really that strong. Um, and like with the original in Octopath Traveler 2, the Apothecary's Tale hit the hardest for me. Um, and so in this case, it's the character of Cassie Florence. She does have amnesia, so she's the one of the eight that has amnesia, and so maybe I'm just kind of a sucker for that trope that is kind of mocked as being too heavily leaned on by JRPGs. But it really sets the stage here for just this massive reveal that details the fate of this band of apothecaries that she led, and the person that is ultimately responsible for their demise. And through this, there's just this one sequence in particular that just lays all that out. I think it's her chapter 3, but it's hard to remember because unlike in the original Octopath, there's the characters actually have a differing number of chapters. In Octopath 1, everybody had 4 chapters, but in Octopath 2, some of them have 5. One character only has 3, and I can't remember whether Cassie has 4 or 5. But anyway, it's kind of toward the end of her arc. There's this chapter that really lays everything out on the table and it just blew me away. And it's very impressive too because I actually thought that Cassie's first chapter was maybe the weakest out of the original 8. I was like, oh man, they're not gonna be able to recapture the love that I had for the apothecary in the first game often. But boy, was I wrong about that. There's just a amazing sequence that just lays everything out. So much stuff that I did not see coming, and it really sets the stage for a truly dark and interesting villain for her big arc. So amazing storytelling going on with Cassie Florence and just an Octopath Traveler 2 in general. I didn't spoil it here because I really want people to go out if you haven't played that game. Even if you played the first one and didn't like it, you thought the storytelling was a little bit too weak for you. I implore you to give Octopath Traveler 2 a shot. I think it is some of the best storytelling that I have ever seen in a game. And improves on all of the things that the original Octopath Traveler did so well. And especially like being as we are right now with the release of uh, Expedition 33 and obviously Baldur's Gate and Metaphor Refantasio, it just kind of seems like we're in this renaissance for turn-based RPGs, which I love. And I think Octopath Traveler 2, I hope it doesn't get lost in the shovel because it is absolutely up there among the elite. Okay, number 15, we're actually going back to The Legend of Zelda. I was surprised. I think Zelda ends up being getting the most of any series on this list, which is kind of a surprise because I don't really think of Zelda as a big storytelling series. But here we are at number 15 yet again with Zelda, with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and it's just the time jump, and which is something that pretty much everybody knows about. And so it's not like this big surprise. And you could even argue that the time jump and kind of the world of ruined state that the world is in its second half is really just a retread of the very similar story beat from Final Fantasy VI, which obviously released 4 years prior. And honestly, you'd be right about that. But even being the gigantic Final Fantasy fan that I am, I honestly think that Ocarina of Time just does this twist a little bit better. Part of that is in the I think the longer time period between the two halves of the game. Final Fantasy VI, you only jump forward a single year after the end of the world, whereas Ocarina of Time, you jump seven, which dramatically changes not only the world state but also your main character, considering you're a child prior to that. And there was really no way to see that one coming uh, prior to that at the time. Like all the Zelda games before that, and there hadn't been very many when Ocarina of Time released. You were always just this kid, and so being this adult Link in the end was a big surprise. But really, just like seeing the once cheerful and peaceful land of Hyrule just enveloped in darkness and death, I think just hit harder because of the nature of the 3D environments on the Nintendo 64 than what Final Fantasy VI could really achieve on the Super Nintendo. It's like, yeah, you understand the world is ruined, but realistically, you're still going to a lot of the same towns. Like maybe they're kind of disheveled, but it's kind of hard to really hammer home the state of the world in that static 2D sprite-based environment. And so they were able to really convey that for the first time very well in the 3D world of Ocarina of Time. And then the time jump itself just kind of sets the stage for these character specific moments, like the aging of Princess Ruto, who you engage with as a child, and then of course the long lasting bond between Link and Epona. That's such a great moment, and it's hard to top. And so all that is kind of I kind of give all of that. Factored into this entry here. I think that time jump and the just the impact that had on people is a big part of the reason that this game remains legendary all these years later. And so Ocarina of Time, like even if you haven't played it, even if you're not a big fan of the Zelda series, like you might be surprised. It's got a little bit of jank in the tank for sure in terms of the combat and the actual gameplay mechanics, but man, there's a lot of amazing stuff, particularly at the time that Ocarina of Time was doing. Okay, number 14, I have Glenn's Identity from the game Chained Echoes. This is another one that I'm going to keep the spoilers to a minimum here. And part of that is because it would be very hard to spoil, because if there's a rival for most convoluted twist on this list to what I talked about earlier with Final Fantasy VIII, it would be this one from Chained Echoes. And really what I really like here, there's a lot of twists and turns in this game, but the one that I really am giving it credit for is the twists dealing with the identity and ultimate fate of the main character of Glenn. Um, it's a multi-layered twist. It's really cool and unique in the sense that you're learning. It's kind of similar to a twist that you would get from a JRPG with main character that has amnesia, right? Where you're finding out about the history and big reveals of the true identity of your main character. But Chain Echoes, Glenn does not have amnesia, and the way that they accomplish this is because the writer here, Matthias Linda, was able to kind of recreate this sense of discovery through the game's mechanic of reincarnation and chained echoes, if you will, with the past. And so the main character didn't have to have amnesia. It was like he had this hidden history that he didn't know about, but it was because it happened before he was in this incarnation ever born. Um, and so the reveals about his history are absolutely shocking. There's multiple times over the course of the game where you think you're like, okay, I think I got it. I think I've got it all figured out. And then Linda just turns the truth on its head again and again. And even at the very end of the game, he saves room for one last major twist just before the credits roll that hits you in the gut again. And maybe even that one might even be the best one. And so it's just really great stuff there. The game, I will say, it's all written by this one guy, and you can tell that in a way. Like it all made sense in his mind, right? But the game can be. It's definitely one of the most convoluted, hard to follow games that I've ever played. But even through all that, the central hook of Glenn's history rolled out over the course of it is actually fairly simple, and I think some of RPG storytelling at its finest. Play Chained Echoes if you haven't. I mean, Jesus, this game is another turn-based classic that came out just in 2022. It actually has a DLC apparently that's coming out this year, which is very exciting. Um, Really awesome game. I didn't like it quite as much as Octopath Traveler 2, but both games are firmly entrenched in my top 25 games of all time, as we discussed many months ago. So give it a shot if you love JRPGs because it really is great. Number 13, I have the Revan twist from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Everybody remembers their first time experiencing the Darth Revan twist. And, people might be surprised that I have it as low as I have here at number 13 instead of in the top 10 or maybe even top 5. Um, and, part of that is just because, well, maybe part of that is just because I actually had my suspicions about the Revan twist ahead of the reveal, so maybe it didn't hit me quite as hard as it did for some others. But I'll still never forget my first time playing through the game with my cousin Brett. We've talked about it in the past how and we need to get him on the podcast to talk about his top 25 games of all time because Knights of the Old Republic would definitely be up there. And both of us agreed that was like our most fun that we ever had playing through a game, like our favorite playthrough of a game ever. That would be kind of an interesting list in its own right. But having him at my side and having that moment kind of confirmed for me and revealed for him was just so great. I've never seen a recreation of the shock on his face ever since, and it's not for lack of trying because I've tried to show him a lot of pretty surprising stuff. But man, that one really got him. Even now, I think like I said earlier, the Revan twist is I think often held up as one of the all time greats, and I think a lot of that is in the execution. Revan is throughout the game is kind of held up as this feared Sith Lord who was kind of legendary in the past, and it's like you're dealing with Darth Malak, his apprentice, and it's like man, just imagine how much more trouble you'd be dealing with if we were dealing with Revan himself. And the game does enough to drop hints and foreshadowing along the way that will allow some players like me to put the pieces together before the reveal, and then of course pull the curtain back in grandiose fashion for everyone else. It's a very Star Wars esque version of this twist. Like it was a little bit of the Luke, I am your father thing going on here. Um, and it's cool because you never see Revan's face, and it's well done. It was shocking, particularly at the time when again, storytelling twists were not as in vogue as they are now, and especially the fact they were able to execute it to that level was just uh, not something that you saw very often. And so, Knights of the Old Republic, we got to give it its respect even today. Number 12 is definitely a very different kind of twist, and I would say that this one is safe for those of you who haven't played the game. is Bloodborne. The reveal of the blood moon and what's actually going on there. Obviously, the fact that Bloodborne storytelling, esoteric as it is strong enough to create a twist to land this high on the list is a true testament to, I think, what From Software accomplished. It's definitely a twist that is going to hit harder for you if you really dive into all the item descriptions and kind of piece together the dark research going on at the Healing Church for yourself. That's how I did it in my most recent playthrough of the game when I was playing through it with Reagan because I wanted her to get the most out of the story. And I think that it worked on her to some degree, although I don't know that it was, I knew that it was never going to be like her favorite game of all time. But it did kind of help to set her up for those reveals. But even during my first playthrough of the game, where I really had no idea what was going on, the scent of the blood moon and the moon presence going on behind the blood moon kind of left me in awe. Even then, and because it's just really cool to have this landmark, this red moon that's been hanging over the game at least for half of it, and maybe even earlier, depending on how quickly you defeat Braum, which is kind of the trigger for it. And then so to have there be like this reveal of what's going on behind the kind of veil of this moon is really awesome. The deeper you dive into the lore and kind of piece together their relationships between the moon presence and Murgo and the Hunter's Dream and Gurman, the better it all gets. So I won't get into too deep into spoilers here. There's still plenty for you to uncover based on what I have talked about here, but really awesome stuff. Some great environmental storytelling. Probably the best sort of environmental storytelling example that I have here on this list. Number 11, I have the twist of observation, which is I'm going to have to kind of spoil it here because there's really no way to talk about it without spoiling it, even though it's a game that not a lot of people have probably played. So if you haven't played the game, don't listen to this part, skip ahead, but give the game a shot if you really like twists in storytelling and a unique gameplay experience. But for those of you who have played or just want to hear it, it's a very weird game for me in that I haven't spent a lot of time playing horror games, and so this game definitely stands out for me in my list of completed titles. The game opens with a major development when the station you're playing as this mysterious AI. You're supposed to be aiding the astronauts aboard this space station that is very similar to in the way it's laid out to the actual International Space Station in our real world or real galaxy. Um, but it opens with a pretty major development when the station kind of mysteriously warps to Saturn, which obviously understandingly distresses the main human character of Emma, who you're kind of trying to help out throughout the course of the story. That's a great moment, and I didn't think that the game was going to be able to top that, but the plot does deepen significantly when you discover another identical station with the same group of people on it later on in the game. And then, of course, you realize later on, beyond that, that the rabbit hole actually goes a lot deeper than even that. And so the game's plot, it's certainly like I said with Bloodborne, it's esoteric, but then, and particularly as it kind of hurdles quite literally toward its conclusion at the end. But I will never forget this. There's this one moment in particular where the camera really is panning out, and you're seeing Saturn, and you're seeing your space station, and you see another space station, and then you see another space station. There's like by the end, there's just all these identical space stations orbiting around Saturn. And you're just like, I just remember seeing that moment, and there's just nothing going on. Like it's just totally quiet in that moment. It's so well done and just like sitting there in silence and just being like, what the hell is going on? Which is, of course, exactly what the writers were going for in that moment. It's an unforgettable sequence for sure, and one that I hope you'll experience because it's really great. Okay, getting into the top 10 now. My top 10 favorite video game twists. We have Octopath Traveler 1, which is the twist of the character of Graham Crossford, and I'm going to have to spoil this. So the first time that I played Octopath Traveler, I absolutely loved it, obviously, as a collection of short individual stories glued together with, like I mentioned earlier, phenomenal JRPG systems, combat, great setting, but I did not unlock the true ending of the game by the first time I played, and thus didn't understand the true context and links between the stories. And so that made my return to the game in my subsequent playthrough before I played Octopath Traveler 2, where I truly did everything all the more impactful as the game revealed the truth about how the stories are linked at the very end before you fight the big super boss. That I wonder how many people actually get to it. And basically, it all centers around this character, this individual character of Graham Crossford, who the party never actually knowingly encounters, but is uh, directly linked to several characters and then sort of thematically linked to others. But the direct links are what is really interesting to me. It's like this is the guy who saved Alphen with the miracle cure, who we learn was originally intended for his wife, but she died before he could actually give it to her. So that's amazing. He's also the author of the notebook that is on Leo Bastral's ship that's later discovered by Tressa and actually inspires her to go out on her journey. And then tragically, we learn that it's actually Graham Crossford that has been transformed into Red Eye, which is the beast with the freezing power that Haunted actually has to go out and defeat to save her master. So it's just an unbelievable twist and it's told entirely through text, which definitely makes it unique as far as video game twists go, but definitely stands up as one of my favorite reveals in all of gaming. I'll definitely never forget that. I was just sitting there with my mouth agape, reading through this and learning about how all of the different stories intertwined. And they, like I said, they kind of tried to recreate that in Octopath Traveler 2, but I just think the storytelling of the individual chapters were so strong in Octopath Traveler 2, and the fact that I'd already seen this done once in Octopath Traveler 1 that it was kind of hard to recreate the magic, and they didn't quite hit it in the same way that they did with this first one. But not seeing that coming, and kind of learning about all that out with one was just awesome. Number nine, I have the reveal of the Reapers from the original Mass Effect. I don't think the Reaper reveal is generally held in as high regard as the Darth Revan one from Knights of the Old Republic, and maybe that's because obviously the best games in the series, the Mass Effect series, take place after the Reaper threat is well established. But I actually look back on this twist even more fondly than the Star Wars equivalent. Um, Perhaps the idea of an apocalypse kind of wiping out a former civilization isn't the most original concept, but just when you think you have a handle on that, it seems like that's something that is understood kind of historically by the characters throughout the game. Um, then you get the conversation with Sovereign the Reaper that kind of where he kind of lays all the cards on the table and he reveals the history that um, the galaxy civilizations had pieced together. It was only just a tiny piece of the true depth of what was really going on with the Reaper's existence. And then I also give this twist bonus points for its reveal that Saren, who obviously had previously been the big bad of the story, has actually lost control of his own faculties and is in denial of that fact. And that just almost immediately shifts him from this cold, ruthless killer into this genuinely tragic fallen hero. And just all of that kind of swirls around in this one over the course of this one conversation with this Reaper in the way that they lay that out, the coloring in that room, the coloring of the hologram. It's just all so memorable and I think just extremely well done. I'm actually playing through Mass Effect with my brother right now, and I'm hoping that he doesn't, because like he was around when I was playing the first Mass Effect. He definitely doesn't know anything about two and three, but I'm hoping that he doesn't really remember this Twist of the Reapers because if you don't know it really hits hard, and so it's definitely one of my favorites. Number eight, I have the twist of behind the character of Kuro in Ori and the Blind Forest. So yes, at their core, the secret to a great twist, I think, is perspective and playing with perspective and using different perspectives to show you things that you maybe hadn't considered or known about. And I think there's one example at the top of this list that executes that to the greatest degree I've ever seen in storytelling. But on a simpler level, that trick works brilliantly here with the antagonist of the original Ori game, Blind Forest, with the dark owl Kuro. So while Kuro is presented as an admittedly badass, but one note antagonist for the majority of the adventure, the truth behind her hatred for Ori and basically everything in the light is revealed when we learn that so she's kind of like this shadowy figure and her children were of course shadowy as well. They had recently been born and then they were killed by the light of this spirit tree that was searching for Ori after Ori falls from the tree in the beginning of the game. and that just completely like nuked her children from existence. She still had one that had not hatched yet, and so she was just overcome with this rage and determination to not let that happen again to her final unborn child. And so she did everything she could to eliminate the light. Then, so that's all awesome. Like that's such a big reveal. Then in the end, Kuro kind of sees the love that Naru, which is Ori's adoptive kind of mother figure, has for Ori. And then there's like this kind of calamity that's happening where there's this fire has broken out and it's threatening the life of her last unborn child. So it actually leads Kuro to allow the light to return, which kills her, but it ensures that her son may yet live. So keep in mind, obviously I've laid all this out on the table. Keep in mind that all of this is told with almost no words. This is a true masterclass in nonverbal storytelling. I think the best example of it on this list. And it is a big part of the reason that Ori and the Blind Forest is my favorite Metroidvania. I think it is a masterclass of that genre. A lot of obviously the gameplay and the exploration stuff is done really well, but none of them that I have played have even come close to the level of storytelling that Ori and the Blind Forest managed to convey, and a lot of it has to do with this big twist with the character of Kuro. So, I kind of had to spoil it here, but if you haven't played that game, still give it a shot. It's a truly great game. I hope that it comes to PS5 someday, so that more people are able to play it because God, it is really great, especially if you're a fan of that genre. Okay, number seven, we have The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. This is a twist that is obviously legendary. We're just kind of calling it the dream of the Windfish. There's really no way for me to not fully spoil it here, but there is going to be some things that I won't completely lay out. But it's kind of a hard game to experience these days without knowledge of this twist. In a way, you could argue that it's that legendary to the point where it's kind of colloquially known among the well-read gamer as the reveal of Luke Skywalker's parentage is among moviegoers. That said, when I finally played through the game myself in 2023, as I mentioned earlier, as part of my playthrough of the series, I was amazed at how hard the twist still hit for me, even knowing that it was coming. Part of that is just the brilliant way the game subtly gets you attached to Koholint Island and its inhabitants, particularly Marin, who stands out as a truly great character in a series with few of them. And I think a lot of that is because she is a creation of the Windfish and ultimately Link's imagination, but also just like the when the game kind of reveals that it's a dream. um there's like I think it's whenever you're getting ready to do the sixth dungeon, and the music that it plays and just the kind of the horror of that reveal to the people that obviously are the inhabitants of this island is awesome. And like the music really hammers that home, and it kind of changes your perception again of what's going on here, where it's like these enemies, well, and most Zelda games are just like kind of mindless monsters that you're fighting your way through. Here, it's like they're kind of sympathetic in a way. They're fighting for survival and their chance to their ability to continue to exist in this world. Because once you wake that Windfish, it's all going to be gone. And so, yeah, it really is awesome. It's a big part of the reason that Link's Awakening is for sure my favorite 2D Zelda game and one of my favorite games in the series. Full stop. And it just results in this game that in this series it's just never felt so bittersweet to finish, and particularly so if you manage to get the secret ending with this shot of this seagull flying overhead. It's like, oh man, it's just so good. And all kind of stems back to the big twist about the fate of Koholint Island. So Link's Awakening, man, so good. I strongly recommend the Switch version. I'm sure the original version is great too, but that Switch version, man, is great stuff. Okay, number six, I have Johnny's Memory Hole from To the Moon, and from here on out, I think I'm going to try to keep all of these top six entries safe for those of you who haven't played these games. Maybe number five will be a little bit hard to do that. So number five, a little iffy, but for the most part, here on out, you should be safe listening to these top six because I want everybody to be able to listen to the top of the list here, and especially since some of these games are games that you do not want to have spoiled for you, and or are games that maybe you haven't played, like To the Moon. So To the Moon, obviously one of my favorite games of all time, absolutely my favorite indie game of all time. It's set up from the start for great reveals because the premise is basically diving into the psyche of a man on his deathbed. So of course there's going to be some great reveals as you kind of go through his history. And many of the reveals and developments over the course of the game are fantastic, but the real twist comes in when you realize that a portion of Johnny's memory has been locked through the use of beta blockers. And so you actually have to get past this barrier and learn things that he didn't even really know about himself anymore for the vast majority of his life. So when you uncover the truth of what lies beyond these blockers and why the blockers were installed, it just completely turns everything on its head, and it reveals this ultimate tragedy of not only Johnny and his family who were directly affected, but also the character of River, his wife, who was unable to communicate the hurt of, basically his beta blocker induced amnesia from his childhood, blocks out his childhood. So this sets the game up for its absolute water shedder of an ending that I won't spoil here in case you haven't played the game, because let's be honest, you probably haven't. But make no mistake, it is an all-time classic. Everybody should try To the Moon. It's only a 4 hour at most game. There are no barriers to entry whatsoever. Anybody can play it as long as you can read, and it might just change your life. It is a master class of writing, a master class of twist writing, and just one of the greatest games I've ever played. Okay, number five now. The Would You Kindly twist from BioShock. Of course, no list of the great twists in video games would be complete without the Would You Kindly twist. It's a great example of how a twist doesn't have to be complicated to be great. So kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from, like your Final Fantasy VIIIs or Chained Echoes that I discussed earlier. While you initially are kind of guiding your mostly silent character through the ruins of Rapture at the behest of the helpful yet mysterious Atlas, which is this character that you meet because it's just kind of what you do in video games. The reveal that he has actually been controlling your character through the repeated utterance of a simple yet memorable phrase, if you will, results in just this near fourth wall breaking meta commentary that of free will and the what free will means in a video game, and that has just been the subject of countless think pieces and of course YouTube video essays. But in fact, it's a twist that's so good. It's actually my understanding is it's actually kind of the second time the studio used it. It's I think a refrain on the much less widely played PC game System Shock 2. I have not played System Shock 2, but I think I kind of understand what's going on there with its storytelling. I think it kind of hits a lot of the same beats. But BioShock reminds me that video game storytelling works best when the writers and the creators are able to reach beyond the characters in the story to affect you, the player. And perhaps with one notable exception that I'm going to discuss shortly, I don't think that there are many games that did it as well as BioShock. Maybe none, other than my number one pick here, where they obviously what's happening in the game is impactful to the characters that are in the story. But whenever they're able to kind of cross that threshold and impact you, the player, on kind of a direct sort of, I guess you could call it fourth wall breaking level, that is where video games kind of are able to tell stories and convey twists and developments that no other medium can really do. And obviously BioShock is just a brilliant example of that. Okay, number four, I have Clouds Past from Final Fantasy VII. Um, in some ways, Final Fantasy VII was kind of the game that made me fall in love with video game twists, and it also made me understand why JRPGs give almost all of their main characters amnesia. Yes, you can tell great stories without that crutch, but finding the hidden truth about your main character is just a tool that is so powerful that it is hard to give up. And Final Fantasy VII does it better than perhaps any other game that I've played. Part of that is in the way that it rolls it out. With Cloud, obviously, he's an unreliable narrator, although we don't know that in the beginning of the game. And he tells this story fairly early on about this trip that he takes to Nibelheim, his hometown, with his mentor Sephiroth, and then Sephiroth's ultimate descent into madness because of some of the developments that take place there. But through Cloud's version of that story, he leaves just enough holes to leave you wondering about certain things, like how did he survive? What happened to Sephiroth? Things like that. And then these holes in his story are exploited by Sephiroth himself, who knows the truth, as he is kind of manipulating Cloud and he's forcing Cloud and then you as the player to kind of question everything you know. And I'll never forget playing this game like in the middle and just thinking, man, I have no idea what's going on here. I am so confused. But that sets the stage for just this phenomenal sequence late game that I think is still my brother Brandon's favorite sequence in all of games. So I'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, where Tifa and Cloud kind of work together in Cloud's psyche to put all of the pieces of this puzzle together. And by the end of that sequence, all the questions that you've had for the entirety of the game are washed away. And it leaves you and Cloud together, fully in lockstep, at the height of your powers and ready to save the world with renewed focus. It's an amazing sequence. Um, and just the way that is all rolled out, I think in Final Fantasy VII is a high that many JRPGs with amnesia related storylines have been chasing ever since. And at least as far as I've encountered, none have matched. Okay, number three, we have Kingdom Hearts 2, which is basically the character of Roxas. So there was a long 4 years between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2, to the point where the PlayStation 3 was nearly out by the time the sequel released in 2006, at least in America. Much of the discussion in Mindshare, I can remember this at the time, leading up to the release of Kingdom Hearts 2, was about which Disney franchises we're going to be in. When we booted up the game, we got back into the action with Donald and Goofy at our side, and we were going to be hunting to find Mickey and Riku and Kairi, all of whom we were kind of separated from at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. To say that we were all baffled when instead the game starts with a completely unknown character wielding the Keyblade, no less, and searching for missing words and fighting mysterious creatures that are definitely not the Heartless we came to know in the first game, as surprising, baffling. It would be there's no way to truly convey what that felt like. It was such a bold decision that still stands out today as completely unique and as far as I can tell, yet to be replicated since in a sequel. Um, yeah, I understand that Kingdom Hearts is convoluted, but when you have storytellers that are taking swings as big and bold as this, like how can you not respect it? And there's so many details that are later revealed about obviously not only who Roxas is and how he has come to be, but even whenever you go back and play games that fill the holes in between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, you even understand like why he has two keyblades. Like that in itself is like this huge twist. But just like everything related to the character of Roxas, I think I give it the most credit for just the fact that they just literally opened the game with a twist, with having you play as this character that you don't know was just so freaking awesome and incredibly bold. But just like the reveals that happen with that character, even throughout the rest of the series, the hits just keep coming. And the truth is, even I don't know the full context of this character because I haven't finished the series, so I've got to get on that. For now, Kingdom Hearts 2, Roxas, number three. Number two, I have the Origami Killer from Heavy Rain. Heavy Rain wins the award of twists that would most ruin the game if you had it spoiled ahead of time. Without the mystery and reveal, the game just wouldn't work, and so that's why I'm not going to spoil the identity of the Origami Killer here. But if it hits for you, as it has for so many people in my life, including Reagan, my brother, my cousin Brett, my grandmother twice, thanks to dementia, and of course me, it just hits like nothing else. Of those people I mentioned, only one, which was Brett, managed to figure out the identity of the Origami Killer ahead of time, which was incredible. But part of the brilliance of this twist is that pulling that off in game was just as satisfying for him as having it revealed through this kind of haunting flashback and subsequent evidence burning session with poorly animated fire, where the rest of us kind of put the pieces together when the game kind of spells it out for you. And so the result of this twist is the cementing of one of my favorite villains ever in any medium, a collection of and really a collection of unforgettable moments of realization that I have personally been lucky enough to share with not only experience myself but share with many of the most important people in my life, and I will cherish those moments for a lifetime. Like just I remember my this is the first game I played with my wife, and seeing her go through that reveal, playing it with Brandon and Brett and together, and having Brandon not understand what was going on, and Brett actually figuring it out ahead of time, and me realizing that he had figured it out ahead of time. It's just like God, it's legendary in our family of just our reactions to this twist, this show-stopping twist of Heavy Rain. So, I don't know that there's definitely some stuff about Heavy Rain that doesn't hold up as well today as maybe it would have in 2010. But I still contend that if you do not know the twist going in, and you can buy into the fiction and everything, and you can kind of get past some of the questionable voice acting, and obviously the game is a little bit dated, and it kind of has wonky controls. You can get past all that. Heavy Rain can really work on a level that very few games can, particularly if you play it with somebody that you really care about and love. So I strongly recommend that. That leaves us with number one, my number one favorite twist in video games. And if you know me well, you may not be surprised. It is the twist of Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. So, the storytelling of The Last of Us Part 2 takes many of the elements from many of the great twists I've discussed up until now, um, and kind of melds them together and creates something entirely new and bold that I've truly never seen replicated in any other medium, and quite frankly, I doubt could be replicated in any other medium as well, which we're kind of seeing right now with, in my opinion, the mixed results of trying to tell this story through episodic television. The game is constantly playing with perspective and changing your understanding of key events and relationships throughout even the first half of the game. But Neil Druckmann and company turn all of that on its head in the second half when they introduce the backstory and motivation of the main antagonist of the game up to this point, and then boldly require you to actually play through essentially the entire game again, this time from the perspective of that character. It throws many of the key elements of traditional storytelling out the window completely and asks a lot of the player to the point where I'm not surprised that this twist did not work for everyone, especially thanks to all the leaks and spoilers that came out ahead of time. And honestly, even I had my reservations at the outset of the twist. I was not sure that I was on board with what they were going for. But if you can buy in and just experience this story on its own terms, the result is, frankly, a life changing experience that might just completely change the way you look at storytelling and character writing and maybe even human perspective forever. And, I know a lot of people are going to be experiencing this twist through the story of the show, and that's part of the reason that I've been so harsh on it, through our discussions, particularly in the last episode of the podcast, just because it's a story that means so much to me, and a lot of that is the structure of the storytelling, and I just don't think that like changing that, there's just no way that you're going to be able to make it as effective. And so, I think that's been a little bit of a disappointment for me in the show. Hopefully they could still change some things around with perspective and may even surprise me and people who have played the game. But, playing that game in its original medium, its original form, having nothing spoiled, was truly unlike anything that I've ever experienced before or since. And I wish that everybody could have that experience that I did because it was truly incredible. And I understand that it doesn't work for everybody. If you try it and it doesn't work for you, then that's one thing. But you know, I just wish that everybody could at least have the opportunity to experience it. And I don't know if that's gonna be the case with the show, and that's a shame. But for those of you who may be listening to this after the fact, haven't seen the show, and still have the opportunity to have this experience of The Last of Us Part Two without having it spoiled for you, please do so because it is awesome. It's just I think it is something that like I said can really sort of change your perspective on storytelling and what it means to have a human perspective and what it means to see events from the perspective of other people. And I think that it can actually make you a more empathetic human being. So anyway, I'll stop it there. But Last of Us Part Two, brilliant storytelling, unique storytelling, bold storytelling, incredible storytelling, and great twist writing. But so there you have my top 25 video game twists of all time. Let me know if I've missed one that you think should be on the list. Obviously, I'm only limited here to the games that I have played, and I've played over 300, but there are still plenty of games and I'm sure amazing twists that I have yet to experience. So if there's any that I fully haven't played or that you think I should, or games that you think that maybe I omitted that you think I shouldn't have, write into the podcast and ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. So next week's podcast is just as up in the air as this one was, as Reagan actually graduates on Saturday, May 10th. We usually record the podcast during the weekend, so we'll see how the schedule works out. But certainly before too long, we'll be back to our Game of Thrones series. I've just about finished all my notes for Game of Thrones Season 5. I'm sure we're also going to have plenty to talk about with the ongoing second season of The Last of Us. And we do have designs to check out this second season of Andor as well. I'm a huge fan of Andor Season 1, and we'll probably do some podcasts on that series as well. So if that all sounds great, or if there's any other series that you'd like us to tackle, again, you could write into ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. For now, don't forget you can subscribe, follow, like, review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, keep it warm.